What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some more Destiny 2 Renegades news. It's been a very busy week full of reveals of course, and today we get a few more details about the expansion, as well as updates from Bungie. So initially, Bungie update and clarify a few things about the content rollout. Additionally, we get a look at more new weapons for the expansion. Bungie actually went ahead and previewed the dungeon weapons too, which is interesting. Otherwise, we have secret details about upgrades for the Praxic blade, some of which I don't believe was meant to be shared for the upcoming exotic weapon. There's additional detail about the quest or the mission to actually obtain this, and then new interview segments speaking about Renegade's abilities, how Bungie will be moving away from that a little bit in the future, potential teases to a new subclass element, and there's some drama about AI artwork, with accusations that Bungie are generating Destiny content with AI. Obviously difficult to verify, and probably not true. You never do know though, do ya? If you guys enjoy the video, a rating really does help us out, but now let's get into it. So initially, Bungie do post that Twitter's been updated to amend an incorrect date for Trials of Osiris, which will be coming back on December 19th with the new Corundum Hammer hand cannon as the featured reward. So they'd said it would drop on a different date, I assume. Of course, nearly 2 weeks after Renegades drops, we get the dungeon on the 13th, so obviously Bungie are going to want to push Trials the following week. And this of course is the new hand cannon, which is an adaptive frame strand hand cannon. Whenever we see that particular weapon model used, even though it's been reused many times, it's still a personal favourite of mine. Other updates though, related to Call to Arms here, Bungie had shared that Call to Arms continues for the remainder of this week, although they add a correction that while daily shipments and event rewards continue to be claimed this week, the event pass cannot be advanced during the final week. Which is unfortunate given that it was a 40 rank pass. They may as well have had it still be available in the final few days, but give us your thoughts below. Otherwise, there's been some drama, or attempted drama, almost. Destiny Bulletin shared here. Unmistakable signs for AI-generated art, as players accuse Bungie of possible AI use in the Dredge and Bale concept art shown in the Renegades Vidoc. And this is the concept art in question. Somebody basically suggested that because of the way this is mashed together, it may have been generated by AI, including the fact that some of the textures vary between the front and the back of the armor, and the fact that the lightsaber on the character appears to be kind of photo bashed together. Now, in my experience, this isn't an indication that AI has been used, but we've seen this quite a bit with Destiny concept art in the past, where these sort of photo bashing techniques do actually get used quite often, simply to get a sense of what things might look like, right? And that's why the character isn't actually holding the lightsaber. For me, certainly not an indication that AI has been used. I'm sure some folks would beg to differ though, so give me your impressions of it down below. Otherwise, we've seen new exotics this week, and there's a lot of conversation about the Praxic blade. Of course, we can throw the Praxic blade, which will seek out targets, and then attacking recalls the blade while it's in flight. We can also perform a more powerful throw, sending the blade in a straight path in the direction of our aim. Plus, while guarding, the sword converts incoming projectiles into bolts that reflect to where you're aiming. And it will be a very customizable weapon with various different mods and catalysts. Creators who had early access to this, though, have been kind of secretive about what some of those mods and catalysts actually are. Reportedly, they were not allowed to share that with us, but the first mod slot obviously is a cosmetic one, which changes the visual color. Most of the colors are existing subclass elements though, and creators have indicated there's an exciting teaser, which they can't currently talk about in the game. Maybe that pertains to the red one. We see this red energy in a bunch of the cinematics and components of Renegades. Obviously, red lightsabers are an actual thing, but maybe there's going to be a tease in there to a red subclass or something in future. Otherwise, Datto had to edit segments of his video out because it had information about some of the upgrades, but the captions were actually left in, as shared on Reddit here, so the Praxic blade can also take certain forms focusing on offense, defense, or a more balanced approach, which all give their own bonus effects. Defensive mode gives you ammo when you block an attack, balanced increases damage versus red bar enemies, and there are different stat boosters on the weapon so that you can slot things like guard, charge rate, and impact. Then there is the power core, which allows us to apply subclass effects, and the way we apply those effects depends on which core you've installed, so that'll be things like regular attacks or throwing the blade, and then you have catalysts, and there are 4 of them, one of them being an eager edge type of effect. Not exactly eager edge, but very similar. And if the power core component does actually pertain to subclass abilities, maybe the red subclass could indeed be teased in Renegades. I'd be extremely surprised if we got any actual abilities in that sphere though. Otherwise, Praxic Blade will be earned during the campaign, so It's an exotic mission that we encounter as part of the main story thread. Moving on, with all the weapon previews, we have had a look at dungeon weapons as well. These carry the Star Wars theme once again. Firstly, there's a sword here, the Sullen Claw, which is a lightweight void sword, and we can see the origin trait where being near allies grants further increased cooling or charge rate and increased damage while at high heat or low guard energy. Also coming from the dungeon will be the Bitter End. This is the Sweet Business-esque machine gun. We can see it's obviously an arc weapon and it's a balanced heat archetype, so very low heat generated and we can vent from the weapon, but overheating forces a sustained vent, with manually venting at very high heat greatly increasing the venting speed, and of course, heat is generated by actually firing these weapons. There's also the High Tyrant, which is a balanced heat weapon, and that's a void pulse rifle. Voltaic Shade, which is an arc balanced weapon, that's a scout, as well as the Conspiracy owned sniper rifle, that's a stasis dynamic heat weapon. And finally, there is the Zealous Ideal, which is a balanced solar auto rifle. So at least 6 weapons coming from the dungeon, which is pretty exciting. Otherwise, in an interview, Bungie speak about destination abilities in Renegades and indicate that they may move away from doing this kind of destination-specific things in the future. Although it does point out that the theme and fantasy calling in these kind of powerful ordinances currently exists inside of specific destinations because they couldn't do most of that if it was accessible in every destination, which is kind of understandable. It's a lot more complicated at least. Otherwise, we've learned that on Tharsis Outpost, there'll be dedicated crime syndicates, which are essentially the return of factions in Destiny 2, but in quite a different format. Bungie speak about the nostalgia for factions like Dead Orbit and New Monarchy, and we'll be able to pledge ourselves to these factions in the social space with the ability to switch anytime we like, and each faction will have specific contracts, a reputation track, and abilities and modifications for the Praxic blade. Also importantly, Tharsis Outpost is an actual social space where we'll run into other Guardians, so that's really refreshing to see, because Bungie have kind of moved away from that in public spaces in general, or what would previously be public spaces, even in the final shape. We didn't run into other Guardians on the Pale Heart, and while it may seem like a minor thing, I think not seeing other players actually has a really big impact on Destiny feeling like a living world, right? Because it's also an investment game, there's an element where you like interacting with other players even if you're just passing them by, because it allows people to see all the cool stuff you have or whatever. It's a generally good thing to have in Destiny, and I'm glad that we're going to get a public Tharsis Outpost. The final thing for today, and potentially a couple of details about Shadow and Order, the second major update of the year for March 2026. So reportedly, it's bringing back raid bosses from Scourge of the Past, Crown of Sorrow, and Spire of Stars in the raid and dungeon event that Bungie had teased last year. So they said it would introduce a Pantheon style event that leverages legacy raid and dungeon content. But from Colony Deeks, apparently this version will feature bosses like Insurrection Prime from Scourge of the Past, Gowron the Sorrowbearer from Crown of Sorrow, and Valkor from Spire of Stars. It also claims that this version of Pantheon would remix encounters with boss fights that pull mechanics from earlier encounters in those old raids. So while it isn't confirmed, it seems pretty likely to be what Bungie are working towards based on what we know. Bungie have also said additionally in Shadow and Order, there'll be plenty more sandbox tuning changes, as well as new content which should include a season pass, activity content, and more, which will be kind of the halfway point between Renegades and hopefully whatever we get next summer or beyond. Of course, we don't have a roadmap beyond that time, so there's a bit of speculation involved, but that's some content for the meantime. Guys, if you've enjoyed the video today, a rating very much helps us out. I'll have a couple more Renegades videos before we go live next Tuesday, so keep it locked and loaded. If you enjoy the content, please do hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that I can keep you up to date. Otherwise though, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.